Next on our schedule, we have our featured speaker, who is President-elect of the American Bar Association. We're so excited and grateful to have Deborah Enix-Ross with us this evening.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I am equally excited to be here and have the opportunity to speak with everyone. I, like everyone else, wish it could be in person, but it's understandable that we have to continue to connect, which I love as the CLE code, by the way, in this way. I'm especially gratified to share the dais, or the virtual dais, with Governor Patterson. I thought his remarks were really good to set the stage. And with leadership from the Hispanic National Bar Association, the Metropolitan Black Bar Association, and the Haitian American Lawyers Association of New York. And I also want to thank you, Genesis, as our moderator, and as everyone has said, Peter Phillips. You've done a stellar job in assembling representatives from just everyone in the field, from the American Arbitration Association, the Racial Equality for Arbitration Lawyers, the ADR Inclusion Network, Arbitral Women, the ADR Committee of the Defense Research Institute, and JAMS, and of course the International Institute for the Conflict Prevention and Resolution. So just a terrific group. And I think we are all, if I can say it, grateful for this opportunity to examine and then remedy the long-standing and systemic inequities in the dispute resolution field, which, if we think about it, is a small but significant slice of the racial injustice and inequity that nationwide protests urged us to grapple with in new and serious ways. This is obviously an especially important area of concern to me, not only as president-elect of the American Bar Association, but also as an international arbitration practitioner and a woman lawyer of color. So allow me to begin my remarks with just a little bit of ABA history. The ABA was founded in August 1878. The first women were admitted 40 years later in 1918. However, in 1912, earlier in 1912, the ABA actually rescinded the membership of William H. Lewis, who was the first Black Assistant U.S. Attorney General, and he had been elected to membership in August 1911. And this essentially restricted membership in the ABA to white lawyers until the ABA passed a resolution in 1943 that stated that ABA membership is not dependent on race, creed, or color. But still, it wasn't until 1950 that a Black lawyer would be admitted to membership. Fast forward in 1995, Roberta Cooper Ramo became the first woman president of the ABA. And in 2015, many of you know Paulette Brown, who became the first African-American woman president. And this August, I will become the second, only the second African-American woman president. So why did I bring this up? And it's because recalling our past, it can be painful, it can be frustrating, but it's necessary because clearly we cannot fix that which we do not acknowledge. So for the ABA, we have 4 articulated goals. One is to eliminate bias and enhance diversity by promoting full and equal participation in the legal profession by those who have historically been denied opportunities, including women, people of color, people with disabilities, and people of differing sexual orientations and gender identities. And we recognize that clients and the public are better served when organizations are diverse and inclusive at every level. And we equally recognize that despite significant efforts, the legal profession as a whole grossly lags behind other professions regarding diversity and inclusion. And despite the ABA's longstanding goal of diversity and inclusion, it wasn't until 2016 that the ABA House of Delegates adopted a resolution urging that all providers of legal services, including law firms and corporations, expand and create opportunities at all levels of responsibility for diverse attorneys, and urging clients to assist in the facilitation of opportunities for diverse attorneys, and to direct a greater percentage of the legal services they purchase, both currently and in the future, to diverse attorneys. And that, I'm pleased to say, that resolution did its job by inspiring various tools and strategies produced by the ABA and elsewhere to promote diversity in the profession. It also got the attention of the ABA's dispute resolution section, which noted that ADR lags the legal profession as a whole and is arguably the least diverse segment of the profession. So that was the impetus for a resolution adopted by the ABA in 2018 that urged providers of domestic and international dispute resolution to expand their rosters with minorities, women, people with disabilities, and people of diverse sexual orientation and gender identities, and to encourage the selection of diverse neutrals. The report accompanying that resolution acknowledged the significant efforts of dispute resolution providers to increase the diversity of their rosters, yet it noted that diverse neutrals remain underrepresented. The report further characterized ADR as a stubborn enclave of homogeneity, arguing that simply achieving the incremental and uneven advances achieved by the legal profession as a whole would actually be a great leap forward. So another problem that undermines efforts to enhance diverse selection of neutrals is lack of transparency. The lack of transparency reduces public awareness of an absence of diversity in dispute resolution. In the past, there was no incentive for outside counsel or institutional service providers, or established neutrals and others to take proactive steps without client pressure. As the largest, most prominent, and most diverse organization of lawyers in the United States, if not the world, the ABA exercises its voice for the legal profession in this and many other areas. So let me just share briefly with you some of the ABA's dispute resolution section's recent and upcoming programs to address the gap in diversity in dispute resolution. The virtual dispute resolution spring conference, unfortunately, it has to be virtual, will be in April 27th through 30th of this year, and it will feature multiple diversity-related programs. Experienced EEOC mediators will address hot topics, including how Asian American discrimination and the Black Lives Matter movement impacts mediations, the need for increased cultural awareness and digital exclusion and access to justice. You should also know that for the past 3 years, the section of dispute resolution has sponsored a fellowship program in which the section annually selects 20 dispute resolution fellows and provides them opportunities to gain experience in the section. These candidates come from diverse backgrounds, and they are, and so if you're interested, we encourage candidates from diverse backgrounds. And this year's candidates range from the United States, Brazil, Latvia, Lebanon, and beyond. The program is aimed at preparing the next generation of leadership, while at the same time helping the fellows to advance their careers and grow their personal network, which we all know is so important within the field of dispute resolution. And the section's Women in Dispute Resolution Committee and its diversity committee are both incredibly strong with over 600 members. And they will be publishing directories in this year to assist those interested in selecting diverse neutrals. So as you can see, the ABA section of dispute resolution is really active in this area. And if you're not a member, I certainly would encourage you to join. And we hope that the ABA's ADR diversity resolution and our subsequent work and efforts from our dispute resolution section and other practice groups, including my own home section of the international law section. And we will work throughout the profession. And then with conferences like this, we can encourage all stakeholders to act. We must constantly challenge ourselves and take concrete, affirmative steps to make the change we want to see. We need to continue shining a spotlight on the low level of diverse representation on neutral rosters and the special challenges created by it's a combination of the network-based culture within the profession. There's implicit bias and the lack of transparency that obscures the degree to which dispute resolution lags behind the legal profession as a whole. As someone who began my career in international arbitration in 1988 at the U.S. Council for International Business, which many of you know is the American National Committee for the ICC International Court of Arbitration, I recall reviewing that list of neutrals that contained no women and no lawyers of color. I've come full circle. I now serve on the nominations committee, and I have seen we now have one of the most diverse slates of arbitrators in the field. And so while we've made progress over time, we must continue. We have to continue to encourage and engage all stakeholders to increase representation of diverse neutrals on rosters and to enhance their likelihood of success in the selection process. We can never tire. We must press on. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak at this important conference. And I hope that we all can gather and learn from each other towards the goal of making a more diverse set of neutrals in ADR. Many thanks.
Thank you so much. There's, if you don't mind, my mind is just buzzing a little bit with what you shared. And first of all, thank you for sharing that arc. I don't know much about the history of the ABA, and to think that, talking about the different milestones for different groups getting through that door, that for women, it was 1918, which is 2 years before we got the right to vote, right? And so if you can look at it that way, that's interesting. And then for Black lawyers, it's 1950, which is, 70 years or something like that after the right to vote. So it's interesting to think about the staggered admittance into the community. And then, I appreciate you talking about how you're defining diversity, because people define diversity differently, right? They're looking at different markers in different communities, and you're looking at women, people of color, people with disabilities, and the LGBT community. And that's a really big tent, and that's very heartening. And you also talked about the resolution encouraging law firms and clients to join this movement, right? To vote with their dollars, in a sense, right? To put some, a stake in the game to make change happen. And I also appreciated that. I think we all appreciated that you identified several areas that were kind of thwarting progress in the field. And there's so much that the ABA has done, that you've done. It's very exciting. And but we also have to acknowledge what are the different areas that are kind of, thwarting or possibly, slowing down some of this progress, because whatever the solutions are, they have to be very targeted. And so with that, there were a few questions that came through. And if you don't mind, do you have time for 1 or 2 questions?
Sure, certainly. Thank you.
Okay, great. So the first question is, I'll just read it to you word for word. So please address the phrase diverse attorneys. it's a relative term. So a room full of females with one male would mean that the male would add diversity. And so can you, share how you're viewing diversity in that lens?
Yeah, so I think this goes to part of what you were saying when we define diversity in its full complement. And I would just add, as an international arbitration practitioner, it has yet a broader meaning, right? Because if you are based in Africa, is it white Africans, Black Africans? Is it, if you're in Asia, what is diversity? So I think it depends on the setting, but there are some common understandings of what we mean by diversity. And the ABA in particular has talked about gender diversity and racial diversity and ability diversity and sexual orientation diversity as well. I think what we have to do is really broaden our understanding of what is diversity, and that it is definitely connected to and in some ways specific to where you are in the world, because not every definition fits every situation.
Thank you for bringing that international lens. That's really helpful too, because it's, as I'm from the U.S. and most of my practice is here, and so I don't often think about that international lens, but it definitely changes dynamics in a lot of different ways.
Let me just add this. So there have been a number of developments from arbitral women. I know Dana is here, and I remember when arbitral women was an idea, and now it exists. Recently, there's been the list of arbitrators of African descent, and actually there was debate within the community, because at first it was going to be called, sort of the African American or the list, and it became clear that wasn't diverse enough, right? Because if even you and I are based in the U.S., but if someone is, Jamaican but living in the U.S., they're not African American, and so that's why it really caused us to really think broader. And so it's of African descent, and that could be anywhere in the world. So again, I think diversity really depends on the situation, but we certainly know that the goal is to give everyone an opportunity. And when you have systems that are set up that don't provide that opportunity, that's where you really see the need to make sure that people understand that you must push for diversity.
Thank you. And as I understand it, some of the things that you were talking about, it sounds like you're also looking at this idea of diversity on different levels. And so one is the field as a whole. Another are certain rosters, right? Certain, organizations. And then when you get down, like, what does the room look like? What is the people in the room? And so there are so many layers to making sure that.
And it's also what are the people who are making the decisions? What do they look like? Are they reflective of the communities or the clients that need to be served, or are they reflective of the profession? And the more that you have those kinds of questions top of mind, the more likely that you will be able to be successful in operating in a more inclusive manner.
Great. Well, I have one final question for you.
Sure.
And your talk has been very exciting, and this question that was submitted reflects that excitement. And so how can people, how can someone who's here tonight, one of the 226 people who are present, how can they get involved with the ABA's efforts around diversity in this field?
So there are a number of ways that you can do that. I mentioned the dispute resolution section, and they certainly have a number of initiatives and they really were the driving force within the ABA to push diversity in ADR. They took that first resolution that was the work, frankly, of Paulette Brown that talked about diversity in general, and then the dispute resolution section took up the gauntlet and made it specific to ADR. So the ABA has a number of sections. Dispute resolution is one. I mentioned the international law section. That was my home in the ABA. They have an arbitration committee as well. Business law, I think, has a mediation and arbitration. So whatever substantive area you're interested in, there is a section in the ABA that can address your needs. And I will say this, if you can't find it, you write to me and I will help you find it. And if it doesn't exist, we will create it, because I think that's how open the ABA is trying to be in reflecting the needs of the profession.
There's a home for you, and there's a home for your ideas and vision, no matter what it is.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to hear from you and to hear about the wonderful things that the ABA is doing.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Terrific.